Welcome to Prism Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 55 of ASP.NET Gridview tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss about implementing custom sorting and paging in a gridview control that does not use any data source controls. Now, before proceeding with this video, please watch parts 47, 48 and 54. In parts 47 and 48, we discussed about implementing custom sorting in a gridview control that does not use any data source controls. And in part 54, we discussed about implementing custom paging in a gridview control that does not use any data source controls. In this video, we are going to modify the example that we discussed in part 54 to include custom sorting as well. So at the end of this video, we should have a grid view control that is custom sortable and pageable. Okay, so please watch part 54 before proceeding with this video, because this is continuation to part 54. So obviously, if we have to enable sorting as well within the grid view control, then the first thing to do is to obviously modify the stored procedure that we discussed in part 54. So at the moment, if you look at the stored procedure that we used in part 54, it has three parameters. The first two are the input parameters, page index and page size, and the third parameter is an output parameter, which gives us the total number of rows. Now, if we have to sort the data and then get the required number of rows, then we need to have at least two other input parameters for the stored procedure. Basically the first parameter is going to be the column by which you want to sort the data. So if I click on employee ID, then we want to sort it by employee ID. If I click on gender column, then I need to sort it by gender column. So to convey that information, which column the end user has clicked, we need to have an input parameter to the stored procedure. And then remember, we can also sort the grid view control in both ascending and descending order. So to convey the sort direction, we need to have another parameter. So first, let's include those two additional input parameters for the stored procedure. The first one is going to be sort expression, which is going to tell us by which column the data should be sorted, and this is going to be of type nvarchar size 50. And the next input parameter is going to be sort direction, and that is also going to be of type nvarchar size 50. Okay, now at the moment, if you look at the implementation of the stored procedure, we are ordering the data by employee ID always. Look at this, we are using this order by clause as part of this row number function. Okay, and in the previous session we discussed about why we are computing the row numbers. Okay, now every time it's actually sorted by employee ID, but instead of that hard-coded column name there, I'm going to use the sort expression and sort direction to sort the data based on those two input parameters. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that hard-coded employee ID there, and then I'm going to use these two input parameters. So case, I'm going to use case statement. Now if you're new to case statement, we discussed about this in the SQL Server video series, so please watch a video from that video series. So when case, when the sort expression, look at that, we are saying order by and we are using a case statement. So when the sort expression is equal to employee ID and sort direction is ascending, then we want to order the data by employee ID column, right? End the case statement, and then I want to look at the sort direction is ascending, so I want to sort the data in ascending order. Okay, on the other hand, when sort expression is employee ID and sort direction is descending, then we want to sort by employee ID but in descending order. Okay, now we have just done this for employee ID column, but keep in mind we have to do it for the rest of the columns as well, name, gender and city columns. And just to speed things up, I have this code already implemented. Okay, so it's just a copy paste of the same kind of code. Alright, so let's format this properly. So if you look at this, when sort expression is name and sort direction is ascending, then we are sorting by name in ascending order. Okay, Similarly for gender and city columns. Okay, so that's the first change that we need to do. So let's alter the stored procedure. So plus F5, command completed successfully. So we have changed the stored procedure. Now let's quickly test this. Look at this. At the moment, the stored procedure has got 5 parameters. And again, we have tested this in the previous session. If you look at this at the moment, you know, this testing code to test the stored procedure only has 3 parameters. So we need to include, the parameters for sort expression and sort direction as well. Now let's say when the end user has clicked on the name column, the data should be sorted by name in ascending order, and then we should get the first 3 records, if the page size is 3. So let's see if the stored procedure is returning us the correct set of the data that we need. So if I am on page 1 of the grid view control, then the page index will be 0. So page index is 0 and the page size is 3. Now what is going to be the sort expression when I click on name column? Sort expression will be name. So name, and then when I click on it for the first time, we want to sort the data in ascending order. So you know the sort expression, the sort direction parameter is going to be ascending. Okay, and then let's retrieve, just to compare our data. So select star from TBL employee, order by, name column in ascending order. So that's the query, and this piece will test our stored procedure. So let's execute both of them. So if you look at this now, look at that. This is from the query when the data is ordered by name. Dave, David, Jamie. That should be the first set of 3 records returned by our stored procedure. Notice this, we get the correct set of records. Now, when I go to the second page, I should get, John, Mark, and Mary records, by the stored procedure. So let's actually change the page number to 1 and then execute this. Look at that, I get the correct set of records. John, Mark, and Mary. Here, 456 is John, Mark, and Mary. Okay, so the stored procedure is working as expected. So the next thing to do is, obviously, since we have modified the stored procedure, we have to modify our data access layer as well, which is going to invoke the stored procedure. So if you look at this data access layer, it's invoking the stored procedure. At the moment, we only have 3 parameters here within the data access layer. So let's modify this code to include the rest of the 2 parameters, sort expression and sort direction. So let me copy and paste this twice. And if you remember, the parameter names here are, one is sort expression. So let me copy that, and let's specify the sort expression as, the parameter name as sort expression, and let's also call this parameter sort expression. Copy that, change the references. Okay, and the value, obviously, where is the value going to come from? The value will have to come into this method as another parameter. So we have to include the 2 additional parameters. So one is the sort expression, and the other one is going to be sort direction. So both of them of type string. Okay, so that's sort expression. Let's copy the parameter, and that is going to be the value for the SQL parameter. And then the next one is going to be sort direction. So let's copy that. So the name of the parameter is sort direction, and let's change the object name as well. Let's change the references, and the value again is coming into this method as another parameter, which is sort direction. So let's specify that here. So sort direction. So that's the change for data access layer. So we included the stored procedure with 2 input parameters, and then we modified the the data access layer to pass the values for those 2 parameters. So at the moment, if you look at this, we changed the employee data access layer. So obviously this employee data access layer is being invoked in our code behind file as well. So if you look at the code behind file, obviously we'll have some compilation errors here because getEmployees method now it expects 5 parameters, but we are only passing in 3. We'll fix that in a bit, but then first let's go ahead to the grid view control. At the moment, look at the column headers within the grid view control. We don't have sorting enabled, so we want to enable sorting. Okay, and to enable sorting, what we need to do is all we need to set is allow sorting to true. Okay, now since we are using custom sorting here, now we are not using any of the data source controls. Another thing that I want to do is, again, as I told you, please watch parts 47 and 48. We discussed about implementing custom sorting in a grid view control without using any data source controls. And in those videos, we discussed about using custom attributes. Okay, so let's go ahead and use two custom attributes on this grid view control, basically custom sort field and custom sort direction attributes, which are going to be used to determine by which column we want to actually sort the data and in which direction. Okay, so on this grid view control, I'm going to specify custom sort field, and then I'm going to specify that as employee ID. So by default, I want to sort it when the grid view control first loads. I want to sort it by employee ID column, and let's call this custom sort direction. And I want to sort this in ascending order. So I'm going to set it to ascending. So these two attributes, custom attributes. All right. So now let's go ahead and change, the employee data access layer references. So if you look at this employee data access layer, this get employees method, at the moment, we are passing only 3 parameters, so we get those compilation errors. So let's go ahead and fix those compilation errors. Okay, so obviously within the page load event, if it's not a post back, meaning when the grid view control loads for the first time, we want to sort the data by employee ID column. Okay, so obviously here, if you look at the employee data access layer, the first parameter is the page index, the next parameter is the page size, and the third parameter is going to be, look at that, sort expression. So where do I get the sort expression from? Now, don't you think we can actually use the custom sort field attribute of this grid view control to do that? When the grid view control first renders, we want to sort it by employee ID. So here I'm going to specify gridview1 dot attributes of what is the attribute name, custom sort field. So I want the value of that attribute, where the end user has specified by which column he actually want to sort the data the first time. Okay, so that's going to be my sort field, and then your sort direction, that's the next parameter. So our sort direction is going to come from sort direction attribute. So let's copy the attribute name and use that within our code behind file. Okay, so we fixed one reference of that get employees method. Let's bring it to the other line. Okay, so let's actually copy this because we need to fix it at other places as well. Okay, when I click the paging button, even at that point of time, I'm going to use the sort field. And this is going to be custom sort direction. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see if it works as expected. Obviously we'll have some errors, we'll fix them as we go, but let's run this and see what is happening at the moment with the changes that we have made. So obviously the first time when the grid view control renders, look at that, it's sorted by employee ID. Now let's say I want to sort the data by name column. Let me click on this name column and see what's going to happen. Look at that, I get an error. What is it saying? The grid view 1 fired event sorting which wasn't handled. Again, we discussed about this in parts 47 and 48. So when we try to sort the data, the grid view control raises this event sorting, and that needs to be handled. So let's go ahead and generate an event handler method. And to do that, the easiest way is get to the properties of the grid view control, click on the events icon, and then we should have sorting event. So let's double click on the event to generate the event handler method. Okay, now let's implement the sorting event, but then before that I need a private method to do something. So I have that already implemented. Let me copy and paste this. Again, we discussed about this private method in our previous video sessions, in parts 47 and 48. Okay, let me quickly go over this code. So if you look at this, the sort grid view method, what is it doing? It's taking in basically four input parameters. The grid view that we want to sort, in our case, it's going to be grid view 1, and then grid view sort event arguments object. So if you look at this sorting event handler method, it gets in those two parameters. Sender is nothing but the grid view 1 control, which we are sorting, and grid view sort event arguments object. This grid view 1 underscore sorting event handler method already receives those two input parameters. So we are going to actually use this private method inside this event handler method. So we are going to call that private method in this event handler method. Okay, so if you look at this sort grid view, so it has got those two objects as parameters, and then I have two other output parameters, sort direction and sort fill. As I told you, we discussed about this method in detail in parts 47 and 48. So if you haven't watched those parts, please watch them before proceeding with this video. So what we are doing here is we are basically initializing the two output parameters, sort direction and sort field, here with the value from this grid view sort event arguments object. So it has got sort expression property, which we are using to initialize sort field, and sort direction property to initialize sort direction output parameter. And then once we are done with that, now we are checking, okay, if the grid view control dot attributes, look at that, on the grid view control we have two custom attributes, current sort field and current sort direction. If they are not equal to null, if both of them are not null, and if sort field, this sort field, if that is equal to the current sort field, then what we are doing, we are checking the direction. And if the direction is already ascending, so if the data is sorted by a specific column in ascending order, and if the end user has clicked on the same column again, then we want to set the sort direction to descending. On the other hand, if the current sort direction is not ascending, then we know it is descending, meaning the previous time it was sorted in descending order, and now we want to sort it in ascending order. And then finally what we are doing, we are updating the current sort field and sort direction attributes of the grid view control. Okay, and obviously what we need to do is the current sort direction. Look at the sort direction enum, it returns us the complete name, but we don't want to store the complete name in this custom attribute. Instead we want to store those ASC and DESC, the words. So that's why we are comparing that. Okay, is sort direction ascending? If that's the case, use ASC, otherwise we know it will be descending, in which case use DESA. And then what we need to do now, we'll actually use the sort grid view control, method, the private method within our event handler method here. Again, I have that code already implemented. Let me copy and paste that within the event handler method. So this is straightforward again. So I'm creating two variables here, one variable of type sort direction enum, and I'm initializing that to ascending, and another one is sort field and initializing that to an empty string. And look at what I'm doing here. I'm actually calling our private method which we have just created and passing in that private method grid view 1, because that's the first parameter, and the second parameter is the grid view sort event arguments object. So we are passing that in, and then the sort direction and sort field, those are the output parameters which we need to pass into this method, which are going to receive by which column the grid view control is sorted and in which direction. Okay, so once we get our sort direction, obviously we need to convert that into ascending or descending, because SQL Server doesn't respect the complete words in order by clause ascending and descending. Instead we need to use ASC or DESA. And then finally what we are doing, we are invoking the get employees method of data access layer, passing in the page index, the page size, sort expression, and sort direction, and then the output parameter. And then we are data binding the grid view control and data binding the repeater. So pretty straightforward code. Now if you have followed parts 47, 48 and parts 54, this should be very easy to understand. So let's save everything now. Let me go ahead and run this and see if it works as expected. So when the grid view control renders, the data should be sorted by employee ID in ascending order. Okay, and that's what happens here. So I go to page number 2, look at that, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8. Now let me actually sort the name by name. Look at that, the data changes. When I sort by name on the first page, we have Dave, David, and Jamie. And I go to the next page, look at that, Pam, Mike, Pam, David. And on the third page, look at this, we have a problem here. It's not working as expected. So I sorted by name column. Let's see why it's not working. So somewhere, we have, the attribute names may not be correct. So let's check that. So the attribute names here are current sort field and current sort direction. And let's check in the code behind file. Oh, we are using custom sort field and custom sort direction. Those are the attribute names that we are using here. But then within the code behind file, we are saying the attribute names are current sort field. So let's actually change them to the right names. So current sort field, and the other one is going to be current sort direction. So let's copy that and paste that here. Let's run it now and see if it works. So now we have an error here. SP get employees by page index expects a sort expression which was not supplied. So when it's trying to execute the command, it is throwing an error. Let's say why we are not passing in the sort direction. Okay, again, that could be where we are calling that, because if you look at on the page load event, what we are doing, we are again using custom sort field and custom sort direction. So instead of that, it has to be current sort field and current sort direction. So let's fix that. So current sort field, and that has to be current sort direction. So even here, it has to be current sort field and current sort direction. Alright, so let's go ahead and run this now. So the data should be sorted by employee ID, but let me click on name column. Look at that, the data is sorted by name in ascending order. I click on the name column once again. Look at that, it's sorted in descending order, and I get the last set of, data sorted by name in descending order and the first set of 3 records. I click on the last page, look at that, David and Dave, they are in the last page. Now if I sort it by gender, on the first page, look at that, I get the 2 females and then male. If we go to the last page, only males. So we can sort it by columns, we can page through. So when we page through, the data is first sorted by the column that we have specified and gets the correct set of records based on the page that we are on. Alright. On this slide, you can find resources for ASP.NET C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.